Hello, it's Nicholas. So today we're going to be attempting to draw out the pattern for what I would think is a late Viking era or a type X sword blade, maybe a type type 10 or type 12. So we'll be using some thinner steel than what we normally would do for a sword. This is 4 millimeter by 1 meter by I think it's 55 or 50 millimeters width here. So it's about 2 inches by 5/32 by 39 inches. We won't need the whole length, I don't think, unless I get really antsy and can't help myself. But we're just going to draw out a blade here. I'm going to see if I can mill one out. So normally I do forging, but with this time I will be doing some milling or grinding the blade out. I have my lovely associate here in the background. My dog, she's eating one of my, I think it's an ash sapling stick. So you'll hear her jingling around. But we're going to get started. So I'm thinking, and I should have made sure my square was within arm's reach here. I'm thinking I'm going to start drawing the tang first. I'll give myself an extra inch here, and then I'll move up the blade. Of course, I have to find my speed square, which is, of course, right next to me. Alright, so I'll probably give myself a ridiculous 7 inches of tang. I'm not terribly concerned about really any of this being terribly precise. From what I understand and the few examples I've seen, the historical people were usually not as precise as the factory precision we're used to today. So I'm just going to mark out a dot there for 7. By the way, this might end up, never mind. Let's keep going. So I'll mark out a dot there for 7 and make sure I have enough length for, I might use the whole thing. So the length for the 30-some inch blade. I will probably clip the tang. So that is why it is so long. But now that I look at it, I really don't think I need that much. I'll go with 6.5. Well, we'll call 6 1/4 good anyways. I might get some chalk. I'm doing a bit of an experimentation with this marker. It's just a random marker. It's not working terribly well. But, so that's that. So, from what I understand, these swords are pretty parallel. Their edges anyways would be more parallel than like a Type 15 sword, which is like a big triangle. I think they honestly ranged all over the place. So we're going to add a bit. We're going to draw out the blade now. Now I've got to sit here and think for a second about how that's going to look. Okay. This is why we start with the handle. So I'm planning on doing one of those pommels that's like a half moon, like kind of a crescent shaped, a wide crescent. So we'll just imagine that there. I'm going to grab some chalk. And of course, my past self was very diligent about cleaning the garage, so the chalk is back where it's supposed to be, in the back of the garage. If I figure out how to edit this, I may even take this part out. figure out how to edit this part out, but this is the first intentional video I'm making about this sort of subject. So that's kind of what this is for. And lo and behold, I did not actually do a good job of putting the stuff away. It was indeed also next to me. Who would have thought? Okay, so why don't we draw out the sword in general? So we're going to go with a start there. I imagine it'll be about 3 feet long. Alright, doing some quick estimating here. So 3 feet long, 1, 2, 3, 4. Cross guard over here. Let's give ourselves an extra 1/4 of an inch. I imagine the cross guard will be about 1/2 inch thick. That seems a little thick though. Trying to put together a bunch of different things in my head at once. Alright, so got that. I do a 2.5 inch wide. I like the T cross guard, and I know they were around, so I'm going to go with that. So we're 2.5 off to 5, 2.5 off to 4. This is just very rough for me. I thought I could do it without doing this. I cannot. Alright, that seems to be about the right width. Blade is going to be 1 inch here, so it'll come out here. Blade then is also going to be coming up to about here. Now the fun part. All right. So what I'm doing now is I'm giving myself a somewhat even plane to work in. Not in the most scientific way, I just want to be measuring from the same points on every side. So I was going to try and skip this step, but it's just kind of something I think I'm going to end up doing here. It's very faint, definitely got sucked into the grain of the wood right here, so I'm going to draw that again. Oop, did it again. Oopsie. Alright, that should be good. So, I think about, let's see. I would like this thing to handle nicely, like, on the ground. I think I'll stick with about 30 inches. Who knows? So, about, I'd say maybe 4 inches from the tip. I'm imagining it's going to be tapering to about 1.4 inches. That's like a really weird term for me to use in inches, so I've got to do a weird conversion here. Alright, so it's kind of like 3/8. So I don't have 16ths on here, so that's going to be fun. But if you take the middle here, half, so we're going to be at 1 inch, and plus 3 more 16ths. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Alright, and now I'm going to scribe a line, and I don't expect it to be perfectly tapered here. I'm just going to do that for I can see what it will look like. Imagine it's going to be a bit of a curved taper here. This is a ridiculously long video. I'm probably going to have to cut it out. Alright. Yeah, that actually looks pretty good. So we come here, and then they have what's called a spatulated point. I don't know what that means. It sounds like the word spatula to me. And I'm a language person, so I'm a bit ashamed and disheartened that I don't know what that means. But it looks like a spade, and perhaps they do come from the same word. But they're going to converge in the middle, hopefully. I like pointy things. I like things that penetrate, so I'm going to give it a bit of a pointier tip than some may have had. Right now it's uneven and very round, and it just looks kind of inappropriate, but we'll go with that for now. So there's that. Alright, the next bit is the fuller. So this already looks too thin to me now that I look back at it. So we're going to have to fuller that out. So I think the fuller, if I go about 1 millimeter in, and yes, I'm using millimeters right now, if I go about 1 millimeter in, will be about 1 inch wide. That's going to run most of the blade. So I'll probably do a double check on how far into the guard they would go, but right now I'm just going to run it here. So my idea here is that I will mill the fuller all the way onto this stock before I shape it. And then as I take material off for a distal taper, that means as I take material off this way, it will lessen the fuller, and then I will use that to get my edge angle. I don't know if that's going to work out perfectly, but just with my eye I can see that it'll get about where I would think it would be good, where I've had success before. So this is a sword. I'm going to be playing around with tempering, and this is I've never heard of anyone making a sword out of 1084 intentionally, unless they use a recycled leaf spring, which I understand those can sometimes be 1084, but I have seen them made out of 1095, and if you can make a sword out of 1095, you can surely make one out of 1084. Alright, by the way, my wife may call me to feed her at any moment. She just had a baby. I don't know if I said that yet, but you may lose me, and that's okay. Alright, we're going to go all the way here. So the fuller, I'll probably do, or the handle, I'll probably do 1 inch thick here. Yeah, that seems a little thick actually, doesn't it? So right now I'm running out of room on my square. I didn't think this through. And that is definitely going to be too thick of a tang. Excuse me, I said fuller, I meant to say tang. I'm just going to draw it this. Oh, I did have room. Okay. So I'm just going to draw it this way. Alright, no chief from carpentering. Oh, wrong one. Woohoo! There we go. We'll see if that actually does look too thin. I might just leave it here though, and when I get to it I will definitely see to thin it out. I'm not terribly worried about that. Some people might be, but again, this is just a general idea so I can see what it should look like. And you don't want, these swords didn't have too long of handles. I think if I do 4.5, that's very generous. These people that use these swords, I guess, were big, so they didn't have tiny hands. So that 4.5 inches that I'm inclined to use might be too big, but if I have it interacting, my hand interacting with the pommel that is upside down crescent shaped, I'm just going to draw a very general shape here, that could work. So the other idea aside from this upside down crescent shaped pommel is the slightly shorter, still crescent shaped pommel, but then with that domey thingy. That does not look right. With the, anyway, they have like this layer here, and they've got a pommel cap. So the cap would put a decent amount of weight into the back of the handle. I'll have to see how the sword feels. I think I'm going to make it a bit thicker than the particular example I got inspired to make this off of. I'll put a link in it if I figure out how to do that. Just kidding. And then go from there. So, I think that's good for that. Now, let's see. Yeah, so if we take, going back to that angle, oh man, yeah, that wood grain really threw me off there. We should definitely have 2 inches there. But that's the narrow line. Alas. That gives me a good idea. Okay. I'll give myself a little bit of the extra on the front and the back. I don't know if that made any sense, or I'm just narrating to myself at this point, but yee-hee. Something I have noticed, and maybe I'm just too cheap to buy anything else, but the steel, especially if it's like oiled, really burns out these markers. So there's that. That's where I'll start the point. This is where I'll start the tang. Alright, so I am going to stick with an inch thick tang. That is too thick, but it will give me a good point of where to, it'll basically make it easier for me not to screw up the sword. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm sticking with. Oopsie. Okay, then I've got more than enough space. Just double checking that I didn't totally destroy that. Okay, perfect. That's more blade than I should need, though I might end up going out to the very end of it because I can't help myself. So, now we've got to figure out the point. So if this is the point of my blade, which is a kind of longer blade than I would have expected to, but I understand they were oftentimes this long. I would go here. I'm thinking it's still going to be pretty thick here, just with the idea I have in my head. So I'm going to go back. I've really got to figure this out, don't I? I've got to make a commitment. Oh, jeez. What am I going to do, Jewel? That's my dog's name, by the way, Jewel. Greatest dog in the world. Or else. One and a half. I got a 1.5 wide. And 7 centimeters. That'd be about almost 3 inches. That's closer than I was. Yeah, I think I just can't see this shape in my head, and perhaps it's because the swords I'm used to looking at, and the knives for that matter, the ones I make, usually I like having an acute point. So that's probably why I'm having trouble doing this. And then this is obviously not going to be a level parallel, but so I'm hesitant to draw it here, but I'm giving myself an idea of what it will look like. So I would want this here to here, I would want this to have a very slight radius. Without a computer, that's going to be difficult. So what I'll probably end up having to do is going on to one of those, using some algebra and making a list of measurements. And then I'll measure subsequently, like from here to here. I imagine like maybe halfway down to the blade is where it's going to really start to noticeably taper. Probably have a slight taper here. I could be totally wrong. Totally changed my mind, but it'll taper here, like let's say a millimeter, taper here, a millimeter, taper, and like then start having that distance. So taper then like here a millimeter. So that's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 millimeters, which is only about 2/5 of an inch. See, now I've got the conversions are throwing me off. And then, then that is too short of a taper. But that's the idea. You would stretch out, it would taper more, like towards here, and then and back. So I have to think about that one. But what I do not need to think about is the fuller. I anticipate putting that fuller in there, and an inch in the middle of the blade. So I'm going to draw that out now so I can see it. And then I'll probably go from there, honestly. I never say honestly in real life, so it is very strange to me that I am saying honestly on the video feed. It's very odd. I'll probably have to find a fancier way to do this. Perhaps I will use the inch wide painter's tape I have in my basement. Whoops, that is not right. I'm aware there's a much better way to do this, but I don't know if anyone else has this problem. When you actually go to grind something out, you just kind of do it anyways. Do it however it works, and then the marks are great to get started, but once you know where you're going, yeah, then it's kind of a, I don't know, you have the end product in mind, you make the end product. You just do it. Very scientific, isn't it? When I was working in a foundry, that was always, I don't know. I had a hard time with that. It was good for me though, because then I figured out how to do this. Better, anyways. Not that I've figured it out very well. I'm just using the tip of this marker because it's actually somewhat similar to the shape of what I'm looking to make here. Yep, so if I do that, let's just say I get absolutely... Some of these swords that I've seen in pictures or on videos, they are much wider than it looks to me that they should be. I know it sounds silly, but yeah, that's about where we are. But so I'm having to restrain myself a lot in drawing this out because I just think it should look differently than it does, but it doesn't. But this is and anyone who's an artist, I would encourage you to do this. When I was learning to write music, like you would study a form, and you would write in that form, and whether or not it feels natural is kind of not the point. You know, there's this idea in the music world that, oh, it doesn't feel right, so I'm not going to do it, and then, you know, they might vomit out a bunch of really awesome stuff, in their early music career, but then they kind of get stagnant. So I can't think of anybody in particular at the time that would do that anyone would know, but that's just a thing. Like, you can always, like, I never thought I'd be making a Viking era sword. I never really liked them, but I really like looking at them. And after looking at it for a while, you're like, oh, I don't know if I would, like, that'd be my favorite thing to use, like, with fencing, but it sure looks like it would be fun to make. So that's kind of where I am with this. So I'm like just doing this by eye. I wound up doing that. I think I might need to push up this way on the width, or bring the width further back this way, but I'm going to mark out right here that I went to 1/8 from edge. But to me it still looks like it should be pretty wide. The sword looks like it needs to be wide. This looks too thin. I'm going to draw it out though and kind of commit to this, and then we'll get to that end. So, but that's just so I have a ballpark of what that's doing. It's about 8.5 inches. So then in another 8.5 inches, we'll say, I don't know if this is a historical ratio or if this is way off. I'm going to go another 8.5 inches. And then by this point, I expect to be pretty much at the full width. So I know I'm getting more finicky now than I intended to, but 8.5, so when I get to about 4 1/4 here, so I left off. Perfect. Yeah, perfect. So that's like right there is where that's why the steel is thick. Oh, that's nice. Steel is wider than I thought. That's why it's off. Okay. I might have to restart this whole thing. Alright, so here. We'll get about there. And that makes the rest of the sword. I don't know yet. See, this looks too thin now. This looks too thin. This looks better. So that is only an eighth off the edge there, or a quarter, depending on where you look at it. I think I'm going to go with the eighth off the edge. I was thinking I might be able to cut this out, but I think I'm just going to have to grind it out. Yeah, I'm almost thinking that's going to need to be almost parallel for how it should look. And if this is painful for any of you to watch, I'm sorry. I'm just writing out some measurements that I'm thinking are pretty certain. And I've got to kind of go backwards and recount them. So what you would do on something like this is you would concentrate weight here, and you do that by shaving weight off of here. By having more weight here, like, and not just, I'm going to put a massive thing on the end of it, and then it's all going to be a big stick that's the same width. Like that gives you one thing, but to have something that moves around in the hand very lively, I hope that was correct grammar, you want to have the weight progressively lessen as you go this way, so that, and even if it's still more, the point of balance is further towards the tip, like where it would balance if you put it on your finger, because the weight distribution is more concentrated in the appropriate area, like by the hand or by like this part of the sword, the sword will feel better. Like if you hold a dumbbell, you can imagine a dumbbell and you put like 5 pounds on one side and a 45 on the other. You have a 45 bar, like this is the 45, this is the 5-pound bar. It may balance reasonably well to be a sword. Aside from being much too heavy, though, you will find that because there's a massive weight at the end and a massive weight here, and it just kind of the same way